is now live. All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Barton webinar. How are we doing today? I'm your host, Joe Barton with Barton Publishing and Barton Nutrition. And we've got Leslie Prinz manning the controls, wearing her Barton shirt today, looking lovely as always. And we have Dr. Scott Saunders, the master of, I just learned something new from him right before we started the call. He is a furnishing doctor. I don't know if that's exactly like he furnishes the office with beautiful arrangements like he has behind him, but I think that was a gift actually. Could you just share a little bit? Like, this is interesting.
In the state of California, naturopathic doctors are not licensed by the state. So other states do license naturopathic doctors. So we have under a naturopathic license, the board, the medical board, they can have a physician that they work under that can allow them to write prescriptions. So that a naturopathic doctor can write prescriptions under the auspices of a medical doctor.
Ah, okay. So just to be clear for people watching, you are a medical doctor and you have naturopathic physicians that kind of come under you to be able to do that. So.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, welcome everybody. Glad that you're hopping on the Zoom webinar here, and we're also live on Facebook, it looks like. If you're watching the recording, you're probably on YouTube, so welcome there as well. And yeah, thanks for joining us. This is the Barton blood sugar webinar where we talk about type 2 diabetes for the most part, and that is related to the blood sugar. What is the name of our product? The diabetes solution kit that we've sold, like I think over 1 million. So close to 1 million of those sold over the years. So we have just this past year and a half supported this product with this webinar. So this is your chance as our customers and subscribers that you can come on here and hear Dr. Saunders talk more about diabetes and then get your own questions answered. And we have to give our disclaimer regarding that because this is for informational purposes only, not intended to be your own personal medical advice, obviously, because Dr. Saunders is not your personal doctor and doesn't know your history and all that. So it's important that you consult with your own health practitioner before doing anything that you may get from this webinar. So thanks for joining us, everyone. We are glad that you're here, and you're the reason that we are here. So we look forward to helping you on your journey to reversing type 2. It is definitely something that's possible, and we have seen all sorts of people that have done it, that have seen their blood sugars go from super high to super normal. And it all just comes with using the right information and applying it properly and getting your questions answered and overcoming any confusion that you might have. So today, every other week, we talk about the basics of type 2. This week is actually more of a topic that connects with type 2 as well, but we're going to talk specifically about protein today, because we don't talk a whole lot about protein. We talk a lot about carbs, but we don't talk about protein. So Dr. Saunders, take it away.
Okay. So what's really interesting is if you kind of scan the internet and you look around, listen to what people are saying about diet, you listen to dietitians, protein is a big thing. Everybody needs protein. In fact, more is better. And more than that is better, and even more is better. So protein, you just can't get enough. You get powdered proteins in these huge bottles, and you put scoops and scoops of protein in your shake in the morning, and then crack about 8 eggs in there, like Sylvester Stallone, and then you drink the whole thing down, and you're supposed to get really huge muscles from that, and you know, your life is better, and we get world peace. However, that's not really the case. There's only 3 problems that Americans have with their diet. Only 3. The first one is carbs. The second one is fat. And the third one is protein. I always talk about how we're toxic on carbohydrates because that's what causes diabetes. But there's another issue alongside that, and that is being toxic on proteins and being toxic on fat. So the combination of factors can be devastating to the body in various ways. So let's talk about what happens when you eat protein. When you eat protein, you cause the body to start making things like making new cells, like stimulating new cells to be produced, and it stops something called senescence, which is when the cells go to sleep or the body takes out the cells that are bad. You stop doing that. So what happens is if you eat proteins a lot, like all the time, and you always have proteins, then you're going to have an increased risk of cancer. Now, has this ever been shown? Heck yeah. There was a really big study done in China, and it's called, let me think, the China study. Yeah. And it was a book written, The China Study, by T. Colin Campbell. And he comes to the conclusion in the long run that after they looked at all of the data, they found that there was a correlation of meat and cancer, like little meat, more cancer, little more meat, little more cancer, little more meat, little more cancer, little more meat, little more cancer. No matter how high they went, the more meat you eat, the more cancer you eat. Well, they said really true. After four different studies, they're going, well, maybe that's a real thing there. So they started asking the question, why? What's going on here? And they found a gene called mTOR, mTOR. And what it does is turns on production of cells. It's an anabolic hormone. It's an anabolic chemical. And what it does is turns on the production of cells, and it turns on the production of endothelial growth factor. And what that causes is more blood vessels to be made. And it turns off the mechanisms for getting rid of senescent cells, or cells that are dying, or cells that are abnormal. So what ends up happening, if you have this constant level of protein and constant protein all the time, what happens is your cells keep growing. And if you have abnormal cells like cancer cells, they don't get taken out anymore. In fact, they're getting like fuel to the fire. They're getting, it's increasing their availability of getting their own blood supply. So now these cancer cells can make their own blood supply and create a full-on cancer, not just cells. And that's what mTOR allows them to do. And so having this hormone around, this chemical around, does increase your risk of cancer. Now, multiple studies have shown that. And eating protein increases mTOR, especially certain proteins. Protein that has increased BCAA, branched chain amino acids. Now, if you go and look up BCAA in any of the literature, you just go online and look up BCAA, branched chain amino acids. It'll go, wow, these things are wonderful. They're great. They increase your energy, they increase muscle mass all by themselves. If all you drank was those drinks, they've done studies on this where they drink just like a drink with just the only amino acids are the BCAA, the branched chain amino acids. And muscle mass increases. It increases 40% more if you get the BCAAs with other proteins. So if you're eating like a whey protein, for example, has a lot of branched chain amino acids along with other amino acids, and that increases muscle mass. And how wonderful is that? Why wouldn't everybody take this all? You know what? It's just one of those things. For every effect, there's a side effect. and more is not better. And so the people who are working out and building big muscles and trying to get more BCAA so they can build bigger and stronger muscles, they do end up with more cancer. And there's another issue with this mTOR, and it's not just cancer. It's that because you're not pulling out the senescent cells and you're building up toxins, then you're getting Alzheimer's disease increase, other neurologic problems, and other toxic issues. And you don't clean up, you don't detoxify very well. And so your lifespan is actually decreased. So the more protein you eat, the shorter your lifespan. Now, this work has been done all over the place with a lot of different researchers. Most recently, the one I read was at USC. There's a researcher, a biology professor. His name is Valter Longo, and he's done a lot of research on longevity. And he started with this group of people in Bolivia or Ecuador, I can't remember, that they have genetically, they have a problem with, it's called IGF-1, the insulin-like growth factor 1. And they never get cancer. And they can eat anything they want and they never get cancer because they don't have this IGF-1 that stimulates cancer growth. Well, it's a growth hormone. So guess what? They're really short people. They're really stubby, but they don't get cancer. So just to let you know that the system is very complex. It's not like, oh, you need, so this is good, this is bad. No, cortisol, what is it, good or bad? Yes, it's really good, but if you have it all the time, it's bad. You need it. What about insulin? I keep telling you, get your insulin levels down. Do you need it? Yes. Is it good? Yes. Is it bad? Yes. Too much is bad. Just so that you know that too much carbohydrate is bad. If you have diabetes, then you are toxic on carbohydrates and you have too much and you got to whittle that away and get it down. By the same token, too much protein is bad. So it's not just an either or situation. It's getting the right amount so that you can keep your muscle mass up. One of the studies on protein showed that men who ate protein like meat in middle age, so 30s, 40s, increased their risk of cancer, but after 65, did not increase the risk of cancer. So if they were like vegetarian during their middle age and then later on, it improved their ability to keep their muscle mass up. So time of life might make a difference. If you're not getting enough protein in your older age, then adding extra protein like meats might be a good idea.
Did you say after 65? You cut out a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, the research was after 65. People, men, this was just studies on men, generally lose muscle mass. They're losing protein over time. And so they asked the question, well, what if they added an extra protein, like meat protein, like BCAA? And it did. It improved their protein. They kept their muscle mass up better. And it didn't increase their risk of cancer. So it's not a simple question. It's not like, oh, it's always like this, or it's always like that, or you should never have BCAAs, or everybody should be drinking this BCAA juice all day long. You have to look at everything in moderation and look at it the right way. So we talk about our 6-10 reset program, and that is no food after 6 and go to bed at 10. And what that does is gives you an empty stomach at night so that you have the right way of doing it. So if you're doing this BCAA, making a whole bunch of mTOR and IGF-1, when you have high cortisol levels and high levels, that's where you get the cancer problem. However, if you only do it at night when your pituitary gland releases that human growth hormone for 10 minutes at 10 o'clock at night when you're in your deep sleep, then you get rebuilding without increasing your risk of cancer. Why? Because during that time, you're taking out all the senescent cells, you're using up all the cholesterol, you're taking out all the toxins, and all of that is going on because you're not catabolic. That only happens when you're catabolic. So if you have the two processes going on at the same time, cancer. But if you separate them, during the day, you're catabolic, you're active, you're working out, you're doing stuff, you're lifting, you're running around, you're drinking, you're eating whatever BCAA stuff, juice. But then you go to bed with an empty stomach so that at night you've separated completely your catabolic from your anabolic, and your cancer risk drops down tremendously. And so that's the research by Dr. Valter Longo at USC in California.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, man, as
Who'd
much
have
as I
thought?
like.
Protein.
Yeah.
So actually, the for general population thought, just statistics, the best diet is a vegan, vegetable-based, a whole food vegan diet.
Interesting. And so does it matter the source of the protein, if it's vegetable protein or animal?
Yes, it does matter. Vegetable protein did not increase the risk of cancer, but meat protein did. And they think it's because of that BCAA that's very high in the meat and low in vegetable proteins. So a lot of people who are taking proteins, they're like into the pea protein or what's the other vegetable protein that they're using? Soy and pea protein. Yeah, they're not so high in BCAA, and they don't seem to increase the mTOR, at least not as much. They do have BCAA in them. All proteins do have branched chain amino acids. It's just the relative amount. So 100 grams of beef has the highest branched chain amino acids, and it's about 7 grams. Chicken's about 6 grams, whereas like a pea protein is only about 2 grams per grams of branched chain amino acids per 100 grams of protein. So this kind of gives you an idea that it's not like all or nothing. It's just like BCAA you eat for over a long period of time, the more you stimulate that mTOR, which is great for short periods of time, but not constantly. You got to be able to get rid of the cancerous period.
Okay.
Does that make
It does make sense. Just to note, you are kind of breaking up sporadically here and there, so I wonder if it would help for you to like reset your connection somehow, maybe. I'm not sure what else we could do here. Usually have good connections, so this is a rare thing, thankfully.
It looks okay. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay. I mean, Leslie, any thoughts here on? We've had a couple comments that it's unstable, but yeah.
Darn.
I mean, we could, would you want to just try to log back in or reset your internet connection or something? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me log back in.
Okay. I will do some segues here in between. So, well, hey, all right. That was some good information. Dr. Saunders will be back on here shortly. And we see your questions and comments coming in. So thanks for sending those in. And so if you're on the Zoom, you can enter your questions either in the Q&A section or in the chat. And we will get to those usually in the second half of our webinar. We typically like to spend the first half with Dr. Saunders just giving us some good information and education. And then we gather up the questions and get to those at the end. So lots of good stuff. Well, let's just say hello to some people, our friends, a lot of regulars that join us every week or most weeks. Patrick, good to see you from sunny Arizona. I'm jealous, although I did get a little sun this week. I was down in Florida for the weekend. We went and watched the the Vikings game against the Buccaneers. It ended up being not so great for Vikings fans, but it was great. Nothing to complain about. Out in the sun, celebrating two of my boys' birthdays along with my wife. So that was a good time. We got Luann from Ontario. Welcome, Luann. And Krish, good to see you as well. And Sandra, hello, also in Canada, freezing her buns off, she says. So I hear you. Yeah, when we got off the plane, it was 8 degrees yesterday.
So I changed it to the 5G connection. Does it seem better?
So far, so good. Welcome back. All right.
Good.
All right. We were just saying hello to some people that were chiming in. So yeah, I think we're good.
So what part wasn't clear?
I mean, I think from what I could tell, just to summarize, like the more protein that you eat, or animal protein, meat, the higher your, growth of bad cells and your body's inability, or less ability to get rid of the bad cells, and an increase in the bad cells. So just sort of a chain reaction, I guess. The anabolic
eating as far as like cancer and heart disease and your length of life, eating what was it? It was 4 times increased risk. Eating meat was equivalent to smoking.
Oh wow.
It was smoking cigarettes.
Just that whole concept of lifespan, I think, is important, because a lot of things that we hear in marketing from like pharmaceuticals and things like that, you'll see different drugs that are advertised, and they'll say this % lower in heart attacks or this and that. But what they don't tell you is that lifespan doesn't change usually with those medications. And so
exactly.
You might be better in one area, but you're worse in another area.
And that's true with chemotherapy agents for cancer and all that. People, they tell you, well, if you don't take this chemotherapy, you're going to die. Well, guess what? If you do take the chemotherapy, you're still going to die. Probably about the same time, but you'll be more miserable.
Right.
You have to be really careful. They narrowly focus on like the cholesterol. Cholesterol is one of the biggest hoaxes next to the coronavirus in the history of the world. And that is people go, oh no, I got to check my cholesterol. Why? The optimum place to be in cholesterol is 220. That's the optimum place for lifespan. And what the cardiologists do, they just narrowly focus on the heart, and they go, well, your risk of a non-fatal heart attack is higher if your cholesterol is higher. That's true, but for different reasons. It's because of inflammation, not because specifically of the cholesterol. But your overall risk of dying increases as you drop your cholesterol, like a lot. Like 3 times. You triple your risk of death by lowering your cholesterol to 120 as opposed to being at 220. So it's not a small amount. Like high cholesterol increases your risk of death by 20%, not 300% if you lower it too low. So things like that, exactly what you were saying. You got to be careful. What is the statistic they're using, and what does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, quality of life and lifespan are like the 2 most important things to look at, I believe, when you're looking at your own health. Like, how are you feeling? And like you said, with cancer and chemotherapy, you feel like crap. You sometimes would rather be dead than be going through that. And so are there other ways to work on the root cause? And most people want to live as long as they possibly can, as long as they're feeling good. So, anyways, just a reminder, if you go to bartonwebinar.com, you can register to join us live, as most of you that are with us right now have done. So thank you for doing that. Also on that page, we're updating the page. We're adding some videos that are like our most frequently asked questions, which answer things about like artificial sweeteners and why is my blood sugar higher in the morning, and like our top 10 questions. Those will be up there pretty soon. But you can also go to our Facebook page, 610 Reset, join us there. And let's see what else we have, the YouTube link to watch all of our archives. So we've been doing these webinars for, I guess this is our 69th week here. And so we've covered all sorts of topics in the past. And so I think it would be good. So there's somebody that's was chatting here, Frank, that he's got an interesting predicament he's in. And so if we could switch over to that real quick here, we'll continue to take your questions. If you have any questions about protein or diabetes or blood sugar or anything, feel free to keep asking those. But here's somebody that it sounds like he's pretty frustrated. He spent hundreds of dollars on pills on the internet, claiming that they will lower his blood glucose. But his blood glucose has never changed, no matter what diet that he eats or tries. It's always extremely high. I asked him for a little bit more information. He's 74 years old, 5'11", and he weighs 165. So not overweight. And I remember you talked about this in the past. He's had type 2 for about 9 years. And so there are some people that get type 2 diabetes, even though they're skinny. And what are some of the biggest reasons that someone wouldn't be able to get their blood sugars to drop, even if they're eating well?
Oh, that's a great question, because I see this in my office fairly frequently, occasionally. Very often it is because there isn't enough insulin. So if they check the insulin levels, either the pancreas is not making enough insulin, because it's unlikely that they have high insulin levels because they're not putting on a lot of fat, because fat cells don't become resistant to insulin. They'll keep taking up sugar and making more fat. So someone who's not overweight is unlikely to have high insulin levels unless they have a genetic abnormality of how their insulin receptors work. Now, that's a different issue entirely. The genetic abnormality is something you have to work with. So with the best way to find out what's going on is why you're not gaining weight if you have type 2, and why your sugar won't come down. So that could be a different type of insulin resistance, a genetic type, and or it could be that the pancreas is not making enough insulin. So your next step is to do a test of your insulin. So there's 2 tests you need to do. One is insulin level, and the other one is called C-peptide. It's C-peptide. And that is the waste product from the pancreas that makes insulin. So even if you're injecting insulin, the C-peptide is not going to change. But it gives you like a bigger picture of how the pancreas is functioning. If your C-peptide level is high, like 4 or 5, then what that means is your pancreas is pumping out a bunch of insulin. If your C-peptide level is low, like 0.8 or below 1, then you're not making enough insulin. But the insulin level helps too, because you look at that along with the sugar. So if your sugar's down and your insulin's down, that's actually could be normal. Whereas if your sugar's up and the insulin's down, you're not making enough insulin. Whereas if it's the other way around, your sugar's low and your insulin's really high, then you're really resistant to insulin. So, or both, sugar's high, insulin high. So all of those factors, the sugar, the insulin, C-peptide, measure those and look at the ratios and find out how your pancreas is functioning, because that's probably the bottom line of why that works.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great information. Frank, I hope that helps. Get that insulin level test and C-peptide test, and let us know how that turns out. Join us on a future webinar here. And then I guess the other thing I was thinking too, if somebody watching this wanted to work specifically with you as their doctor, that is an option. And so we like to give out your office phone number every once in a while. And I think this might be a good case, because sometimes people have, and somebody asked this question, so they went to their regular doctor and they're like, hey, I've got this new Synachroma product. I want to use it. Can I? And the doctors might be like, oh, why would you want to use that? I mean, for the most part, most doctors are going to say, sure, won't hurt. But sometimes you'll find a doctor that would be like, no, don't waste your money on that. So, and that was actually a question, like, how do I get my doctor to tell me it's okay to use this? But But anyways, we can get to that in a second. But I wanted to give you a chance. Tell us your office phone number again, in case somebody wants to contact you and have like a personal consult. Looks like Leslie's got it listed here actually. So
Okay. Deal.
Yeah, so 805-688-7171. That's what we like to call the Dial a Doc number, but that'll get you in touch with Dr. Saunders' office, and then they can set you up for a consultation and to talk about if that would be a good fit for you. So, yeah, all right, good stuff. So before we get into all of the other questions that have come in, any other notes on protein that you wanted to share that you've thought of here in the last few minutes?
Yeah. So anything that you take in too much of, you're going to be, it's going to become toxic. So you can become toxic on protein. That's what cancer is caused by too much protein. You can be toxic on fat. As you're taking in more fat, you get more inflammation. So a lot of people who have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, have inflammation. And you can get toxic on sugar or carbohydrates, which is what we call insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. So all of those syndromes is a toxicity. It's too much. So it's not that you should never have any of those. That's not the point. The point is, we as a society generally have too much. The amount of obesity or the percentage of the population that's obese is still increasing. It's about 50% and going up. In some areas is close to 80% of the population. I think in Mississippi somewhere there was like 80% of the population is obese, not just overweight, like they're the dark red.
Where was that?
I think it was Mississippi. I was.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Okay, real quick. You mentioned Mississippi. I gotta ask this, if you don't mind.
Okay, I know how to spell it. It's MISSI.
Yeah, that's one of the first long words I ever learned to spell. So, so this might go all over the place. I'm gonna try to condense it, but. So Mississippi, I think, has one of the highest populations of Black people, and Black people typically have higher, percentages of their population that have type 2 diabetes. There's also a correlation with lower levels of vitamin D, and then this also brings in coronavirus. So, I don't know if I'm making strange connections there or not, but what does that make any sense where there would be a connection with the vitamin D levels and diabetes and coronavirus?
There could be. There have been studies done. People with very dark skin do make less vitamin D. I remember I was telling people before that the sweat comes out, the vitamin D is made, and then you reabsorb it. That's actually only a small portion of it. Most of your vitamin D is made in your skin, in the skin cells. So if you have dark skin, it'll absorb all that, or a lot of the ultraviolet light that allows vitamin D to be made. So you actually make less vitamin D. There have been studies that, yes, that's actually what happens. So then it follows, although I haven't seen any research specifically on it, it follows that vitamin D is the number one most important factor. If you get COVID-19, your vitamin D status will determine whether you end up in an ICU or sick for 3 days and you can go back to work. So if you're sick for a few days and then go back to work, you have above 30, your vitamin D levels above 30, and that's like 90%. It was a significant difference. The people that end up in the ICU, they have low vitamin D levels. So what Joe's talking about is this is a real thing. Vitamin D does not prevent you from getting the flu. Vitamin D does not prevent you from getting coronavirus. You still get it, but you have a mild illness instead of a severe illness. That's the difference. That's the division. So some of the studies were saying, oh, vitamin D doesn't work because people got it still. They tested positive even though they had good vitamin D levels. That's not the point. They're just totally missing the point. The point was you're going to get it either way. But the vitamin D prevents you from getting in an ICU, sick, like dying from it.
Right.
So the vitamin D also helps you be more sensitive to insulin. So if you have if you're eating carbohydrates and your insulin level is high, and you have low vitamin D, then you're going to get more problems with type 2 than you would if you had good vitamin D levels. That's why Cinechroma contains 5,000 units of vitamin D, because if you're taking about that level every day, number one, it'll prevent you from getting really sick with the coronavirus. Number two, it'll help you be more sensitive to your insulin and allow you to decrease or reverse your vitamin D more easily.
Yeah. Okay.
Good point, Joe.
Well, that's good. So yeah, people with darker skin, like I'm obviously not darker skin, I'm pretty pale, but the darker your skin, probably the higher levels of vitamin D supplementation, or I guess the more urgency to take those 5,000 units per day on average of vitamin D3, right?
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, right. I would.
And I mean, it's not like that's not a toxic amount for anybody typically, from what you've seen, right? 5,000 a day is just kind of a good standard for.
Oh no, I know people who take 50,000 a day and they're fine with it. It's 10 times that. And
then K2 is also something that's in our Cinechroma, and that helps with absorption or preventing like something with calcium related to having higher levels of D. And a lot of people, if they're only taking vitamin D3 on its own without the K2, what happens then?
Well, they increase their absorption of calcium, so then they tend to excrete more calcium in the urine, and they tend to put more calcium in their arteries and hardening of the arteries. What the K2 does is it takes that calcium and goes, oh, let's put that in the bones. So it starts shuttling all the excess calcium into the bones, so you're not excreting it in your urine and you're not depositing it in your arteries.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really, so Cinechroma, that was kind of a question from a few different people, like, why do I need this? And so this is something that we've covered on many other webinars, but it's got just 6 ingredients, and all of them are for deficiencies that most people have that are very important to function of the body. So highly recommend that. We have, you can get that linked on bartonwebinar.com. Click on that, and then it's on sale right now. Plus, if you enter a coupon code, you can save an additional 25%, and that coupon code is webinar25. So if you're not stocked up on Cinechroma, you can get that now. And all right, so we've got about 20 minutes or so left. Let's turn things over to Leslie and the question and answer section. So take it away, Leslie.
Here we go. All right, well, we need to start out with this because this is from Luann, and she has a fun update for us. I would like to give you guys an exciting update. I downloaded and started the diabetes kit on September 11th, ordered and started Cinechroma on October 24th by the time I received it in the mail. On Friday, December 11th, 3 months later, I'm down 18 pounds. I'm eating between 10 and 6 every day, following your program to a T. It works. My next goal, down 20 pounds by Christmas Day. I will post in the Facebook group. Thank you.
Woo! Way to go, Luann.
That is awesome.
Work.
That's what I like to hear.
Okay, I got to copy that here. I got to copy that and let our team know that. So hold on. I don't want to lose it. Joe, you want to grab the next one for me while I do that? Because I don't want to lose this.
You bet. All right. Okay. How much protein should we have in our diet, Dr. Saunders?
I knew that was going to come up. So the recommendation is generally around 40 grams of protein a day. But if you're counting, if you have to count, then I don't know. For me, that's a hard thing, but some people like to keep track. So the 20 gram carbs, I did okay with that when we were deciding how to do the diabetes solution kit. Okay, how are we gonna do that? Are we gonna do the fasting? Are we gonna do like a no sugar diet? How are we gonna do this? and the 20-gram carbohydrate diet just kind of fit okay. And so as I was doing it myself, going, oh, that apple, that's like my whole day's supply of carbs, or I can't eat anything else. So, you know, I learned pretty quickly the carb content of foods that I normally eat, and it made it easy for me. So if you like to count, count to about 40 grams of protein a day. And the optimal type of protein would be vegetable protein. So broccoli actually contains more protein than milk. So broccoli is pretty high in protein, and beans are pretty high in protein. So if you're eating beans and carrots and broccoli and spinach, and greens have protein in them. So if you're counting, if you want to count, then just, you know, look up the amount and add it up to about 40. That's what the recommended is.
So 40 grams of protein, and then depending on whether you're in phase 1, 2, or 3 for carbohydrates, if you're in phase 1, you're right around 20 grams of carbs a day. And that's really to get your sugars out of the cells and get your blood sugars normalized.
To detox. To detox from the sugar toxicity.
Yep. And then phase 2, I keep saying type. Phase 2 is like up to 40 grams of carbs to kind of like, let's see how we do if we increase it a bit. And then phase 3 is like long term. And that is somewhere between 40 to 60 per day, I believe.
Some people will have to stay at 20. Some people, see, that's the point of phase 2, is you vary between your 20 to 40 and say, okay, where am I best? Where do I work best?
Yeah.
And then phase 3 is the lifetime. This is where you go.
Okay. All right. And so then the last question will be, how much fat? So we got.
Okay. Of course, that's going to come up too. So remember that we all get too much fat, too much protein, too much carbohydrate. So we're all in the too much. We're toxic. Why? Because we have so much food available. We just have a lot of food. So in order to get rid of the inflammation and decrease your risk of cancer and decrease your risk of diabetes and heart disease, less fat, less carbohydrate, less protein. So then what do I eat? Okay, there's one thing, one macronutrient that human beings are deficient in. Most human beings who have toxicity of those 3 are deficient in the one macronutrient, the only one left. And that it's also a carbohydrate, but it's not digestible. It's called fiber. So high fiber, low fat, high fiber, low protein, high fiber, low carbohydrate. That's the ideal diet. That's why if you look at a vegan diet is really high in fiber and relatively low in all the other things. You don't get a lot of fat from a vegan diet. You don't get a lot of protein from a vegan diet. You do, but not a lot. It's hard to get too much. I once sat with a big salad, a big bowl full of salad, and I was eating it. And after I don't know, 20 minutes or so, half an hour, I got kind of tired of crunching on this salad, and I told my wife, I know why people can't get fat on a vegan diet, because they get bored of eating before they're full, and they just walk away from the food and they're done.
Yep.
So high fiber, low fat, low carbohydrate, low protein. And if you want to count, that's fine. And you know what? I don't recall. It's been a long time. I don't recall how much fat, as far as grams of fat, is recommended. I know the fat is lower. 20 grams of fat sounds about right, but I'm not sure.
I know the keto diet, typically it's like 80, 10, or 80, 15, 5, like 80% fat, which sounds high. Like I would guess it's probably more like 50% fat and then 25% carbs and protein or something like that.
Yeah. I think instead of having 3 macronutrients, I think that the fiber should be added as the 4th macronutrient, because that's what feeds all your good bacteria in your intestines. That's what keeps your brain working right, your stomach working right, your digestion working right. all of that is done by this macronutrient, the fiber one. So I think we should count carbohydrates, fats, proteins, fiber, and then make fiber like 50%, and then the other three make up the other 50% of the bulk of the food that we eat.
All right. All right, next question, Leslie, you ready?
I'm ready. Okay, James says, some doctors say no oil of any kind. What is your opinion on that?
Okay, so I know these guys that say no oil of any kind. Dean Ornish is one. Esselstyn is another. McDougall, the McDougall diet. I think McDougall started it out at first a long time ago in the 1980s. He was the one that said, wait a minute, let's do an all vegan, no fat diet. And he was so no fat that they wouldn't even allow olive oil, or even like you couldn't even eat an avocado on their original diet because there's too much oil in it, kind of thing. And actually, statistically, you can't avoid oil, by the way, you can't. All your green vegetables contain a great omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. And fruits have fat in them, so you can't avoid it. But if you add no extra oils, then you're not going to add any inflammation to your body either. So, you know what? I'm okay with that. If you like that kind of diet and you can live with that, there's plenty of research to show that it works. In fact, former President Bill Clinton, when he went back to his surgeon, he's going, I'm getting chest pain again after he'd had a 4-vessel bypass when he was president. And and he came back, I think it was 5 years later, and said, oh, yeah, you're clogging up. That's what always happens. Well, we have to do it again. He goes, what? I'm not doing that again. There's no way. You guys are crazy. So he went to Esselstyn and got put on one of those no-fat diets, vegan diets, and he cleared up his arteries, and he's a thinner, better man today because of it. So I don't have a problem with the no-fat diet because I know you can't avoid fats as much as you would try. It's impossible.
Okay, we have a question from Robert here. What is the difference between cortisone and cortisol?
Oh, good question. Okay. Cortisone is a ketone. Cortisol is an alcohol. Any other questions? Okay. Cortisone is a sort of a stable form, but it's not the active form, but it's made into cortisol in the body. So cortisol is the active hormone, and cortisone, it does have some activity, but the body makes it into cortisol. So what your adrenal glands make is cortisol, and what we give injections of is cortisone. That most of it is made into cortisol, but it's a less active form.
Okay, this is a good question from Steven or Stefan. It could be either. I am just starting. Which products should I start with?
Okay, Steven, don't start with products. Start with the kit. Get the kit, get the book, and start with the book. The more important than the book, more important than products, is your diet, your lifestyle. The lifestyle is the most important part of it. Now, if you have chromium deficiency, then it's going to be much more difficult. If you have a vanadium deficiency or selenium or vitamin D deficiency, then it's going to be more difficult. So we've tried to make it easier by saying, okay, these are the things. So that's what I formulated this. These are the things that I find most people are deficient in that blocks their way and prevents them from getting good insulin sensitivity. So the Synachroma is a decent thing to start off with, because any one of those, if you're deficient in it, is going to slow down the progress of insulin sensitivity. So start with the diet, start with that. And then secondarily, consider some product like synochroma would be a decent one to start with.
Stephen had asked another question about a food planner, and I was just going to mention that inside of that diabetes solution kit, you will find a lot of really good recipes, a planner, all
Food
of that
planner,
information that you're
shopping list.
Yeah. So you'll be good to go there.
Good
Thomas, welcome, Thomas. Are there any side effects from taking too much D3?
Yes. They have a toxicity level of D3. It's not really toxic. You can actually take huge amounts of D3. Vitamin D3 is not a vitamin at all. It's actually a hormone. And your body makes it. And the reason it's called a vitamin is because without sunshine, you don't make this hormone. But your liver makes a pre-hormone that then has to come into your skin, then makes the pre hormone is then made into the pre-hormone, which then has to go to your kidney to be made in the active hormone, which is the 125 dihydroxy. So that process regulates your levels of hormones. So if you take a whole bunch of the vitamin D3, you can increase your levels of the active form by quite a bit. Some people more than others. And if it increases rapidly, then you absorb a whole bunch of calcium from your food and you get hypercalcemia. And the hypercalcemia can cause cramps and constipation and fatigue and weakness. So if people take too much vitamin C all at once, then they can get that hypercalcemia, which is the toxicity of vitamin D. The vitamin D itself isn't toxic, but that's what happens.
Okay, Rachel asked if eggs are a good source of protein.
Eggs are a great source of protein. As a matter of fact, eggs are a complete protein, but not just that. Eggs are a complete everything. It's like everything your body needs is contained in an egg. And the best way to cook an egg to get the greatest benefit out of it is to cook the albumin, the white part, cook it hard, and then leave the yolk runny. Because if you cook the yolk too much, then all of the good vitamins, vitamin B12, vitamin C, other vitamins are destroyed in the cooking process. So the optimum way to eat an egg is white, hard, yolk, soft.
So eggs over easy and 3 triple pancakes with, no, I'm kidding.
With syrup.
Pancakes. Yeah. Just the eggs over easy, maybe some vegan bacon or something for breakfast or whenever you want your eggs.
Yeah, well, it's kind of terrible, you know, when you think about it. First we tell them, oh, don't eat carbohydrates, 20 grams, that's all you can get. You know, 1 apple, you're done. And now we're telling them, don't eat protein, it's horrible. No, that's I don't want anybody to think that's what it is. It's not. There's nothing wrong with protein. It's just that a high protein diet does shorten your lifespan, does increase the mTOR.
Okay, Anku is asking, you know, we did a webinar on lowering high blood pressure. How many bananas can he eat in a day to maintain 20 grams per day? And unfortunately, I just looked it up. It says 27 grams for 1 banana. So
depends how green it is. If it's super green, right, you can eat 3 of them. Yeah, I think so. He might be referring to the blood pressure video that we do that talks about bananas, banana splits, but it actually talks about the potassium in the bananas, I believe. And so that's really, we're not necessarily saying go eat bananas. It's more like, hey, you probably need more potassium. So, but yeah.
And you could also eat a half of a banana as well.
Well, so if bananas are not the only way to get potassium. Beans have a ton of potassium, and so do, there's a lot of foods that have potassium. In fact, every fruit and vegetable has potassium. Apples have potassium. But the reason bananas have a reputation for having high potassium is because per gram, bananas are very high in potassium. So, but all fruits and vegetables contain potassium. You can't avoid potassium.
Okay, I know there is a question somewhere here from Krish. Okay, the general thought is that when diabetics who are on one treatment regimen or another, when they reduce their body weight, both sugar levels and their hemoglobin A1C comes down. If weight keeps going down and down, will not the subject feel weak and gradually lose their balance? What is the earmark here? Is the weight of twice, okay, hold on here a second. What is the earmark here? Is the weight of twice that of height, inches, assumption a valid one? Where is the limit? A diabetic should feel strong after achieving the A1C just below 6. I'm worried about continued loss of muscle mass and stability as a whole. Your input is greatly appreciated. Thanks, Dr. Saunders.
Okay, that's a good question. Loss of muscle mass. So one of the things that you're doing when we wrote the book on reversing diabetes, the first part of the 20-gram carbohydrate is allowing more protein. And one of the things that allowing more protein does is it increases mTOR. We were just talking about that horrible hormone that causes cancer. Well, it's a growth hormone and it actually keeps your muscle mass up, and it's kind of important. So during that time when you aren't taking in any carbs and you start using fat for energy, the idea is that you can keep your muscle mass up by not using up the muscle for energy when you're not eating carbohydrates. Most people, when they stop eating carbs, will switch to fat burning first. But I have had a couple of cases, not a lot, only a few that I can think of offhand, where instead of burning fat, they started burning muscle. They started burning protein instead. Because the body can use either carbohydrate or fat or protein. Any of those are sources of energy. And most people have a hierarchy of carbohydrate first, fat second, protein if there's no carbohydrates or fat. But not everybody has that. Some people have it switched where they burn protein before fat. And that's a hormonal thing. That has to do with the glucagon doing gluconeogenesis. And there's other hormones that we haven't dealt with much in this metabolic process. So your concern is a good concern. And if you find you're losing protein when you're not burning fat very easily, you got to get both the insulin and glucagon down. And the best way to do that is fasting. So when your stomach is empty, then you switch to fat burning more easily because of the way the hormone balance is. So if that helps.
This is good. I'm just going to ask this. We're completely out of time, but I'm going to ask one more question. Patrick had asked, I noticed I'm feeling so much better when I fast. Are multi-day fasts better than doing the 6-10 fast?
Yes. So the 6-10 fast or a reset that we've called it is called intermittent fasting. And that is where you limit the time period in a day that you eat food. So instead of spreading it out all the way around the clock, you only eat between here and here. Usually it's 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or something like that. And then you don't eat the rest of the day. You don't put anything in your mouth. That's called intermittent fasting. A long-term fast, like days, the optimum is 3 days. That's where you get your greatest benefits. It peaks out right at 3 days. But you still get benefit beyond that. In fact, the doctor I was talking to you about, Dr. Valter Longo, the longevity researcher at USC, he has a 5-day fasting regimen where he allows a little bit of food, and you buy this kit that has some soups and stuff in it that you can sip on. That's a 5-day fast because he's shown that 5 days is optimal if you're doing the fast mimicking, where you're actually eating little bits of food throughout the day. I don't recommend that personally because I find it hard when I eat a small amount, I'm hungry, I'm looking for food. Whereas if I'm going like, I'm not eating anything until next week on Thursday, it's easy. I don't have any problem with it. I don't know why. Just taking in little bits of food, I'm like, I'm hungry, I gotta eat something. So I find eating small amounts to be more difficult than just saying, cut it out completely, which then your greatest benefit is benefit to fasting day ratio is the 3 days. Great question.
Someone asked about our recipes and where are they? So inside of the diabetes solution kit, if you have the printed workbook copy, it starts on page 75. And then we've got, I don't know, 40 or 50 different recipes in there, all the way to page 102. And so I don't know that we have anything with lentils specifically, but we've got greens and some other things in there. And it's really just kind of.
If we don't have anything with lentils, we should have something.
I don't know if we.
Well, and it's not the recipes are not an exhaustive list. These are just some ideas to get you guys kind of to experiment with some things, see what you like. So if you want to add lentils and make your own, do so.
Yeah.
I put my favorite recipe in there. It was the ceviche. I love it.
Yes. That's on
it's
page
easy to 93. Make too.
Yeah. Page 93, Dr. Saunders ceviche. So there you go. But yeah, if you want lentils, like you can substitute lentils in for some other ingredients on a lot of different of these recipes, and just measure your carbs to keep it in that 20 gram range and all that. So, but I think we should probably wrap things up for the day. Lots of great questions answered and information covered, all sorts of good stuff about protein, and love to have the interaction here. Love answering questions, helping people on their journey. Love hearing people's success stories. And so we, welcome hearing that as well. So if you're looking for a printed copy of the book, Stephen, go to bartonwebinar.com and then just scroll to the bottom of the page, and you can click on the button there. Will take you to our store where you can get a copy of that as well if you don't have that. So it's the same as the digital version that you have. So if you've already bought the digital version of the Diabetes Solution Kit, just go log in and check your email again. If you can't find that, log in and to the download page, and you can find all those recipes and everything else that we've been talking about. Although I will say we don't have everything in here that is covered on the webinar. So this is like a free bonus, these webinars. You get all sorts of more awesome information, just very comprehensive. And that's why I love Dr. Saunders so much, is that he is just an open book and knows so much, and provides a holistic experience and can really help people. So thanks again, Dr. Saunders. You're awesome. Welcome. And are you going to be here both of the next 2 weeks? We got holidays coming. Christmas is next week and all that.
No matter where I am, I can be online.
Awesome. Okay. I might be gone the next couple of weeks, but you and Leslie can handle things without me for sure, probably even better. And so I'll be taking a little bit of a break unless I decide to hop on or something, but currently have schedule conflicts. But anyways, that should do it for today. And thanks everybody for joining us. Again, bartonwebinar.com. Check out that page. If you're not already registered, you can register for our next Zoom call, which will be next Tuesday at noon Central. Also, one housekeeping note, we're looking to move the date and time of these webinars to be on Thursdays in the future at 11 a.m. Central Time. So that's going to allow for just a few, different people that can join us that maybe can't join us at this time. So just make note of that. But again, we've got all 69 of these webinars. Most of them anyways are archived on our YouTube channel. If you have any additional questions, check out those videos there. Leslie gets most of those transcribed and updated with notes, so you can skim through those, and you can spend hours watching those and increasing your information. And then the biggest thing though is take action and just know that you can do it. There's all sorts of people all over the world that are following the advice that we have here and experiencing great results. And that's what we hope that you will experience as well. So Dr. Saunders, close us out, parting thoughts, and then we'll call it a day.
Okay. So if you want to eat high anything in your diet, make it high fiber.
Boom, drop the mic. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. God bless. See you next time.